Welcome to One Rep at a Time Radio. This show brought to you by OneRepAtATime.net, the site for folks making fitness a vital part of their self-improvement process. And we're back. Welcome to One Rep at a Time Radio, brought to you by OneRepAtATime.net. I'm your host, Marv. Doing things a little bit differently today. This is going to be our episode on popular diet camps. For lack of a better word, eating strategies probably is more appropriate. And we're just going to give you the pros and cons on like mainstream eating strategies in camps and trying to show that we shouldn't be dogmatic. There's pros and cons to everything. We shouldn't follow, it's my way or the highway type mentality. We could gain and learn from a lot of different camps when it comes to fitness, nutrition, health, recovery, whatever. Now, this episode's gonna be a little bit different. So if you just found this podcast, we're going out of order. So originally these shows air as an internet radio show on the 100% free The Recovery Channel mobile app. We started doing that probably 8-9 months ago. We're now going back digitally remastering them and releasing them as podcasts. Now we're jumping out of order. So this would have been episode 20 that aired only in January. But we are jumping out of order, and we essentially did this from scratch, starting over from scratch. So this is 100% podcast version only, because we are excited to announce that we finally turned our One Rep at a Time nutrition hierarchy, our approach to nutrition, into a standalone ebook. So if you can't afford working with us, you can at least get the ebook, and it teaches you the concepts of nutrition that really matter, in my opinion, with after 10 years of experience working with countless peoples. We have well over 100 studies cited in it, and it's teaching you concepts of nutrition that can be applied as a standalone to nutrition, or they can be applied to all these various nutrition camps. So if you're somebody who really likes the ketogenic eating strategy, then you could still apply our principles there. If you're somebody who likes paleo, if you're somebody who likes the Whole30, elimination, intermittent fasting, whatever, you could apply the concepts there. So you're actually learning what truly matters with nutrition, and we can make it as simplified as possible, right? We have the big three top. If you don't have those things taken care of, it makes no difference if you do these advanced techniques. Get the big three taken care of, at least for a period of time, then try the advanced techniques, learn how your body reacts, and you're good to go. So very excited about this episode. Real quickly, this is our $1 million statement when it comes to nutrition. The quantity of your food will determine the number on the weight scale. Period. End of story. I don't care if it's 2,000 calories of quote unquote clean eating of, let's say, salmon, broccoli, and rice, or 2,000 calories of Krispy Kreme donuts and cheeseburgers. The scale is essentially going to say the same thing. However, the quality of your food and the quality of your training, so by quality of food, I mean what we call single ingredient foods, bulk foods that you buy. So chicken breast, turkey, broccoli, cauliflower, asparagus, rice, oatmeal, potato, items that you're having to prepare yourself that are not pre-packaged, pre-processed, added with a bunch of extra sugars, some really crummy pro-inflammatory fats, a lot of sodium. So single ingredient foods, what ratio is your food group single ingredient? What's your ratio of how much protein you're eating, how much fiber you're eating? Are you eating healthy fats? Are you avoiding healthy fats? So that matters. So does the quality of your training. So what I'm talking about is, are you resistance training? Are you resistance training properly? Are you only doing cardio? Are you not exercising at all? The quality of your food and the quality of your nutrition will determine how you look and how you feel, meaning body composition and overall health. So quantity determines number on the weight scale. Quality of food and exercise determines how you look and how you feel, so your body composition, your overall health. That is our $1 million statement of nutrition. Now, I personally do not like using the word diet when you're focusing on losing weight, because by definition, at some point, you're going to be off that diet. And then what the hell do you do? Especially if you're somebody who's jumped from fad diet to fad diet, going from one popular diet camp to the other, not really learning anything. You could be that yo-yo dieter, and you're always, I'm on a diet, I'm off a diet, and on a diet, and off diet. So when I use the word diet, I'm referring to my eating habits 365 days a year. So if you're somebody who says, when they say the word diet, they're thinking I'm doing it for weight loss, quit saying the word diet and say eating strategy, nutrition plan, whatever. If you do use the word diet, I'm talking to 365 days a year. I don't care if you're only focusing on losing weight for 6 months out of the year. Talk about your eating strategy 365 days of the year. At One Rep at a Time, we're big on food labeling. So I really dislike clean foods versus junk foods. We'll kind of get into that a little bit later. We typically use the categories of smarter, needs to be smarter. Figure out whatever framework's going to work for you. So for me personally, like when I eat
Smart eating to me means quantities controlled and qualities controlled, right? That's smart. If I fail in those things, if I'm eating a bunch of processed stuff, a bunch of sugar, those highly palatable foods that hijack our palate and actually make it really easy to overconsume, right? I call that needs to be smarter. Or you could be somebody who says, well, if I eat a single cookie, not a whole sleeve of cookie, that's smart. And then smarter is when I eat vegetables at every meal, so I'm not hungry to eat the cookies in the first place. So whatever framework works for you, use those labels. I just don't like clean versus junk because there's that connotation of good versus bad, evil versus righteous. We can start to assign our morality as an individual to somebody based on what we're eating. Plus, it sets us up for binging. If we demonize a food group, well, it's the pink elephant phenomenon. Don't think of the pink elephant. I guarantee a pink elephant just jumped in your head. So if you're demonizing a food group, especially if it's something that you really, really like, when you do eventually give in and eat it, first and foremost, you had to convince yourself it was okay to go to the dark side. Because, you told yourself, I'm not allowed to eat it. I'm not allowed to eat it. I'm not allowed to eat it. So you could try to moderate in the beginning, but if you're like me, for me, it's like pizza, anything chocolate or chocolate cake or flavored potato chips of any kind. If I demonize those, and I eventually eat a piece, I'll sit there but it's a trigger food for me, right? So while we don't need to demonize anything, we believe in trigger foods. These are foods that you tend to overeat. So like I talked about, highly palatable, highly processed, a lot of extra sugar. They definitely have a bliss point that they have identified in the 1970s that food manufacturers go to hijack your brain. So these are foods that you tend to overeat. So I eat that piece of pizza and man, it was really good. And I sit there. I'm only going to eat one. Well, then I eat two. And then I get a case of the F-its. And then, I'm eating 4, 5, 6 of them. And then I get this in my head. Well, what? I'm already off my quote unquote clean eating. So I might as well get it out of my system tonight, go crazy, and then just restart my perfect diet tomorrow. And that is not a healthy relationship with food, nutrition, and potentially yourself and your body. So we're really big on labeling. I'm really big on emphasizing quantity and quality. And so, like I said, with the nutrition hierarchy, we turned it into an ebook format that we were going to be releasing next week. Very excited. We also work with people hand in hand. But even if you don't purchase that ebook, this podcast is going to give you a ton of information about the pros and cons of popular diet camps or eating strategies. I'm not going to be winning a lot of favor with a lot of folks. A lot of this might go against the grain of what you've been taught, but somebody's got to say it, damn it. And because I'm not aligned with any of one of those, I could kind of give you pros and cons and go in and out. I don't have a supplement sponsor. I've turned those down because I don't want it to misconstrue the message, stuff like that. So anyways, we're going to go the pros and cons of a ketogenic eating strategy. Next, we'll go into paleo, then if it fits your macros. We lump the Whole30 and elimination diets together as a whole. Then we go into meal replacement shakes and bars. Next up is vegan vegetarian. Then we go over the carnivore diet, which kind of came out of left field. It's pretty wild. Then we go over to fasting, primarily intermittent fasting. That's what most people think of, but there is full fasting protocols as well. And then we close real quickly on just the ultra low fat, non-fat, fat-free craze that was big a couple decades ago. Thankfully, it's kind of worked its way out, so do not do that. So anyways, really hope you get a lot out of this. And if you have any questions, you could reach out to us at our website, onerepatatime.net. You could email me personally, marv@onerepatatime.net, and get more information from there. But we're going to dive into the pros and cons of popular eating strategies. Definitely take some notes or, just really pay attention, right? Because it is a decision, if you do decide to follow an eating strategy or go into one of these camps, that you need to be educated about and not just only, cherry pick all the good stuff that people have paid a lot of money for SEO to have pro keto articles right up top, pro paleo articles right up top, stuff like that. So without further ado, guys, let's jump into it. First popular diet camp we're going to cover today is the keto diet, ketogenic diet. It is all the rage right now. So just so you guys are aware, family, is that diet camps or popular diet camps, they come in and out of favor every 10, 15, 20 years, typically when supplement companies decide to make a supplement to bring it back into the mainstream focus. So keto constantly falls in and out of favor. Right now it's really hot again because guess what? Supplement companies finally realized a way to make a ketone supplement, which I'm going to tell you right now, don't buy those. They are super expensive unless you're a super high level athlete, make a living that way. You're wasting your money, so do not buy those. So ketogenic eating, and just so you know, I know I harped on, let's not follow the word diet, but when I say keto diet, or next we're going to cover paleo diet, and then we're going to cover every fit your macros. When I say the word diet, I'm just meaning overall eating strategy for that. So that is eating 365 days a year. So if you're eating keto 365 days a year, that is your diet. It's not a set period of time to lose weight. It's your eating strategy 365 days a year. So ketogenic eating, proponents of it are like Dr. Jacob Wilson, Mark Bell, Dom D'Astano. There's a bunch of people who are big on that. What it is a ketogenic diet has your body running on fat, which eventually becomes ketones, hence the name ketogenic, right? So your body is a hybrid car. You've transitioned it from running off of carbohydrates and glucose onto running onto fats, which then turn into ketones. So our body has been, in essence, addicted to sugar and carbohydrates the majority of our life. And then when you switch to a fat-based diet, where the actual studies when they implemented ketogenic eating in a hospital setting was 90% of their calories were from fat. Most people do not get that high when they're following ketogenic eating these days, but the majority of your calories have to be from fat. In fact, we're going to get into it, but if you have too high of protein while following a ketogenic eating strategy, it will kick you out of what's known as that ketosis. So ketogenic eating takes a period of weeks to potentially months to fully adapt. So I'm just letting you know, first and foremost, while you're keto adapting, there's something known as the keto flu, where some people feel like absolute shit. Other people, doesn't really affect them, but just be wary of that. So if you're switching to a ketogenic eating strategy and you feel like garbage, stick with it. So again, the majority of your calories have to be coming from fat. You're running on fat as a fuel source. Ketones, they have to be present in your meal. If you're just doing, high protein, just veggies only, you're not having a fuel source. So when people say, well, I want to run an ultra low carbohydrate diet, that makes no sense whatsoever because you're not giving your body a fuel source. If you're going to go ultra low carbohydrate, so less than 50 grams of carbohydrates per day, you might as well switch to a ketogenic diet plan or eating strategy so you give your body a fuel source. Your body's fuel sources are either carbohydrates or fats. It is really hard for your body to run off of protein as a fuel source. Yes, it can do that, but it is very metabolically expensive and your body really does not like to do that. And you're not going to feel well because you're not having enough either blood sugar or fat sources to run off of. So ketogenic eating, the majority of your calories have to be from fat. So let's get into the pros first and we'll go into the cons. One of the biggest pros of ketogenic style eating is there is massive increases in cognitive clarity because your body is no longer running on sugar. Your blood sugar levels are low and super stable throughout the whole day. So you're not getting those crashes or those, hunger pains or just, you get that fog when you haven't eaten in a while and you feel like your blood sugar is lowering or you've eaten a bunch of sugar and your blood sugar is lowering. Your cognitive clarity on a ketogenic eating strategy is phenomenal. That's why it's really big in Silicon Valley. They do a ketogenic style eating, or the biohacking community. They do ketogenic style eating plus they implement intermittent fasting windows. And I have done that, and I will be honest, the mental clarity is insane. It's like you've drinking 6 cups of the best coffee in the world and you are just locked in. Another big positive of the ketogenic eating strategy is it's very satiating because guess what? You could constantly tap into body fat sources as fuel source. So it is very satiating. So that is a big leg up, especially if somebody struggles with, their quantity or moderation quantity control. Ketogenic eating, when you're fully keto adapted and you're going, you can honestly forget to eat. So it is very satiating. So that is a huge tool to be used in your tool belt. Now, ketogenic eating strategy for most folks will improve their blood levels. Most folks. Keyword is most folks. So it's very helpful for people with cholesterol issues or very helpful for the diabetic or pre-diabetic crowds because you're not eating carbohydrates, you're not spiking insulin. So your body's getting a chance to reset its insulin sensitivity and figure out, I have put clients of One Rep at a Time on a ketogenic eating strategy after, going the pros and the cons and just having a conversation with them, and they've been able to get off their metformin. Now, super important that is individual specific, and I'm not promising that's going to happen to you, but I have gotten people off of their metformin following a ketogenic style eating. And then if you're overweight if you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, odds are you're overweight. So that, really helps them with the crashing from the sugar and, you're feeling satiated. So that is an awesome benefit of keto. Now ketogenic, I have to be careful of how I say it, but it is appearing that ketogenic style eating may be anti-cancer because of not eating, not having sugar and carbohydrates. So you have low levels of what's known as IGF, insulin growth factor. So it may be very anti-cancer. So just remember that word may. Just put it this way. As some of you know, my girlfriend and significant other is a breast cancer survivor. So we had her switch to a ketogenic style eating strategy. And I actually did it for the majority of last year to support her. And believe it or not, I did it while I was in a quote unquote bulk. So yes, I built muscle
on a ketogenic eating strategy, which a lot of people freaked out. How are you going to build when you're going ketogenic? I'm just going to show that the quantity of your food absolutely matters. Now, I had to eat more food than if I was doing a 365-day year diet, okay, that contained carbohydrates. So when I go keto and I'm trying to bulk, towards the end of my bulking, I was having to eat 6,000 calories a day as opposed to maybe 4,500 to maybe 5,000 tops of eating carbohydrates. So it is possible to build muscle on a ketogenic eating strategy, but it is difficult. You have to eat a lot. But it may be anti-cancer, maybe tumor shrinking. So anybody I know who is a cancer survivor or diagnosed with it, that's what I would suggest. So that just gives you my stance on that. Ketogenic eating is also fantastic for folks with neurological issues. There are actually some really smart people are calling Alzheimer's and dementia diabetes type 3. So folks with Alzheimer's or early stage dementia, neurological issues, ketogenic strategy is fantastic. Same with Parkinson's. Anything neurological, ketogenic style eating has been shown to be a great improvement for. And ketogenic style eating is great for endurance, long distance activities. So it's not necessarily great for your, short sprint, what's known as glycolytic exercise where you're running on stored carbohydrates because you're not eating carbohydrates. Your body's not going to absorb any. But it's good for ultra marathon running. It's not good for necessarily CrossFit or bodybuilding or whatever. So, or like basketball, something like that. But it is great for steady state, long endurance type activities. Now let's get into the negatives of ketogenic eating. First and foremost, I need to make this very clear distinction. Ketogenic eating is not magical for weight loss. So people think ketogenic is just this magical thing that I can only lose weight if I go ketogenic, which shows that you're becoming dogmatic and you're not really learning the concepts of nutrition. So why do people think it's magical? Well, after 3 to 5, maybe 7 days, people see this huge fluctuation on the weight scale down. It could be 3, 4, 5, up to 10 pounds they will lose in their first week and like, oh my God, this is like the greatest thing ever. Well, guess what? Because you're not consuming carbohydrate, listen to what I just said, carbohydrate. Hydrate, water is in the word. For every 1 molecule or 1 gram, whatever unit you're going to use, for every 1 unit of carbohydrate your body absorbs and stores is what's known as glycogen in your muscles. Your body also absorbs 3 molecules, 3 grams, 3 units of water. So when your glycogen levels will deplete for the first 3 to 5 to maybe 7 days, then you're losing a bunch of water weight too. So all that water weight loss is stored glycogen and stored water. It's not necessarily body fat, but people freak out in a good way saying, oh my goodness, I lost 6 pounds in a week. This is the greatest thing ever. Got to keep up with it. No, you're just losing water weight. So because of that, a very common mistake I see is people become dehydrated. When you're on a ketogenic style eating strategy, you need to be drinking more water than if you weren't because your body's not storing water like it would if you're eating carbohydrates. Now, the biggest problem I have with ketogenic eating is there is no quantity control. You look online, all it talks about is you could eat bacon and eggs and cheese and full fat meats and ranch dressing and this is the greatest thing ever. There's no quantity control. Quantity control still matters. So if you're going to do a ketogenic style eating, at least for a period of time, I strongly suggest you do quantity control measures, which means tracking your food. That is the biggest problem, or one of the biggest problems I have with ketogenic. Basically, when you go online, there's no talk whatsoever about quantity control. So people think I'm keto, so then calories don't count. Calories always count. Keto means commitment. You cannot go in and out of ketosis. Think I'm going to do keto for 2 to 3 weeks and then, kind of get a cheat meal in. So I see this a lot with yo-yo dieters. Keto is really, I'm trying to think right now off the top of my head. Of all the popular diet camps or eating strategies, keto is the one that you cannot dabble with. You cannot just dip your toe into the pond. You have to go full force because you're having to change your body of what fuel source it's using. So by constantly flip-flopping back and forth, you're confusing the hell out of your body. Your body doesn't know what the hell to process. Your insulin is going to get all messed up. So if you're dabbling with keto, you're better off never dabbling at all than just trying it for a week or two and then eating carbohydrates and then trying it for a week or two, then eating carbohydrates. That's going to do more harm than good for your overall health, your body weight, your body composition, the whole 9 yards. So keto means commitment. You cannot dabble with keto. If you're thinking of going keto, you need to be signing up to do this for months at a time. There is no in and out. So that whole cyclical ketogenic eating or target ketogenic eating, I am not a fan of whatsoever. You need to be understanding that you're signing up for keto for long term. Problem I see with keto is a lot of people are lacking fiber, so they're loving all the cheese, the fats, the meats, the butter, the coconut oil, all of that, but then they're ignoring vegetables. You cannot ignore vegetables on a ketogenic eating strategy. You should still be eating veggies at every single meal. You need to get fiber in your diet. The only vegetables I would tell you not to eat, or which are shockingly high in carbohydrate, is corn, carrots, and beans. So do not eat corns, carrots, and beans, but at every meal you need to be having some sort of vegetable. Even that's a spinach, right? Spinach goes well with eggs. Mushrooms go well with eggs. Broccoli goes well with eggs. So eat your vegetables, damn it, folks. Eat your vegetables. Also, just be wary of how much nuts you're eating, because nuts are another hidden, or peanut butter, any sort of nut butter is a hidden source of carbohydrates. If you eat too much, again, if you eat too much carbohydrate or too much protein, you can kick yourself out of ketosis. Now I know I'm getting a little advanced, but just do not avoid vegetables, but do avoid corn, carrots, and beans. When you decide to go off of a ketogenic style eating strategy, a lot of people have a very hard time reintroducing carbohydrates into their diet or eating strategy, especially women. So you need to be mindful of that. We don't need to get into semantics. We don't need to be up in arms. There are physiological differences between men and women. It is what it is. It's not being sexist. It is the truth. So women typically have a harder time reintroducing carbohydrates back into the diet than men. So you need to be mindful of that when you decide to go off of keto. Same thing, because you're not eating any gluten. Gluten is a non-resilient enzyme. And so if you have eliminated gluten from your diet for going keto for a year, and you try to reintroduce it back in your diet, you may have lost your ability to process gluten for the rest of your life. So you need to be wary of that. Now, I said most of the population does great with keto and blood values. Well, guess what? Some of the population does very poorly. Their cholesterol goes to hell. And so that's why it's really important to get blood work done. Now, personally, my cholesterol always is fantastic when I'm keto, and I'm eating 2-3 pounds of bacon a week, 36 eggs a week, at least minimum. I mean, I still eat a lot of eggs today, even when I eat carbohydrates, and cholesterol is fantastic, all that stuff. But some people just respond really poorly. So you're going to need to get that checked. Because you're not eating carbohydrates, you're not getting insulin, your cortisol, which is a stress hormone, will increase over time. Now, I was talking about this with a client yesterday. Cortisol is not this terrible hormone that we can't have. Yes, it is catabolic, meaning it breaks down tissue, but you actually want your cortisol to be elevated in the morning to help you wake up, and you want it to be low at night to help you fall asleep. So cortisol is mandatory. However, because you're not eating carbohydrates, cortisol can get to too high of levels, and then that can have negative consequences. So be wary of that. Also, because you're not eating carbohydrates, your body's natural conversion of T4 to T3, so T4 is inactive thyroid hormone, T3 is active thyroid hormone, will decrease over time. So some people like to do refeeds, strategic refeeds of that. Also to do something known as maintaining their metabolic flexibility. So they're claiming that they could still don't lose their ability to process carbohydrates. That's a little too advanced for this, but I would be wary of that, because if you're doing refeed too often, you're kicking your body out of ketosis, and you got to keto adapt all over again. You're going to feel like crap. So just be wary of that, but your T4 to T3 conversion will go down. And then just again, folks, do not buy those damn ketone supplements. And I know there's that whole ketone shake infomercial going on right now. Keto is not magical for weight loss. Do it for the cognitive benefits, the potential health benefits, potential feeling full benefits if you're having a hard time with overeating or binging. I would do it for that. I would not do it for weight loss. It is not magical. They've done countless studies of a carbohydrate containing diet and a ketogenic diet. So long as calories, protein, and fiber are equated for, there is zero difference over the long term. Okay. And also ketogenic eating, while it's fantastic, it's a lot of fun, especially if you've been, very, what's the word? You've followed, mainstream media, so you've avoided a lot of high fat foods for way too long. It's kind of liberating to be able to I could eat bacon and ranch and cheese and full fat meat and eggs, and it's fantastic. You can kind of get sick of it, or eating out can be a little bit of a challenge. So just be mindful of that. If you go to parties, most people there's a lot of simple processed carbohydrates when you go to parties and get together. So it can be a little harder sticking to a ketogenic style eating when you're out there, but because you're feeling full, you could just easily just say no thank you. So that's ketogenic eating. Let's move on to paleo. Paleo is eat like what our ancestors did in the Paleolithic area. That's the whole concept. So there's no starchy carbohydrates. In theory, there's no processed food. So it's a bunch of nuts, berries, veggies, meats. They eat a lot of butter because I guess butter was back in our Paleolithic area, supposedly. Haha, that's kind of a joke. Rob Wolf is really big on the paleo diet, but pros, Paleolithic eating or the paleo diet was one of, if not the first popular diet camp that emphasized quality controls. So I cannot underscore the importance of that. That is huge. It was the first one to emphasize quality control, if not the first. So I love that, right? Eat whole, natural found foods, not a bunch of processed stuff, not a bunch of sugar. Rob Wolf and a lot of people who are proponents of the paleo diet just emphasize its importance and how great it is for autoimmune disorders. So when we have folks come to us with help and they have a legitimate autoimmune disorder, we definitely start them out with paleo or some sort of elimination diet. So paleo is fantastic for autoimmune. And again, it emphasized quality foods. And in the beginning, it emphasized preparing your own foods. Now, paleo meal plans and paleo packaged foods are popped up everywhere. So it is possible to still eat a bunch of highly processed, quote unquote, paleo food. So that is a negative. And now it became so mainstream and popular that you could still eat a bunch of processed stuff, but still follow a technically paleo diet. So let's go to the negatives, like I just kind of talked about. So paleo got into camp with CrossFit a long time ago, and it's kind of ironic because paleo is the worst diet for CrossFit. Paleo and keto make no sense for CrossFit whatsoever. Some people argue, I feel great. If you do paleo long-term and do CrossFit long-term, you're going to have issues, potentially adrenal fatigue. Spoiler alert, nobody at the finals of any CrossFit games is full paleo. They all eat starchy carbohydrates. Jason Phillips is the main, nutrition guy for CrossFit, and he brought this to light of it is the worst eating strategy for CrossFit because CrossFit is glycolytic exercise, so you're relying on a bunch of glycogen, stored carbohydrate in your muscles. Well, if you're not eating, fruit is really the main source of carbohydrates in a paleo diet, and fruit is not stored as glycogen in our muscles. It's stored in our liver instead, so it does not give you an energy source for your workouts. So it is terrible for CrossFit. You're going to run into a wall. I'm working with a couple people who they've done that. And so we are introducing carbohydrates back into their diet. Just be wary of that. Now, like I talked about with keto, there are non-resilient enzymes. So gluten and dairy, especially women, have a hard time bringing these back into their diet. So in general, if you're going to cut out whole food groups for a very long period of time, you're going to have to be willing to potentially do that long term. So I'm working with a woman who sour cream used to be one of her favorite foods. She's done paleo for over 2 years, and now she can't do paleo. She can't do sour cream. So if you try to reintroduce gluten or dairy and all of a sudden you're immediately on the toilet, you're gassy, you're bloated, you're miserable, you may have lost your ability to eat that for the rest of your life. So you need to be understanding of that. Now with Paleo Online, there's no quantity control emphasized, similar to keto. So why I love the fact that it emphasized quality, is one of the first ones ever to do that. There still is not a lot of emphasis on quantity. And remember, quantity matters. Quantity matters. Quantity matters. So just, if you could do a whole foods emphasized paleo style eating with potentially adding some starchy carbohydrates like potatoes or yams, and then emphasize quantity as well, that is fantastic. So there's our take on paleo. Now let's move on to what a lot of people are probably wondering about: if it fits your macros, iifym, also known as flexible dieting. So this was made popular by Dr. Lane Norton. Now somebody else taught him this, but he was the one who really brought it into the forefront. And so if it fits your macros, let's do the positive first. First and foremost, it was one of the first mainstream diets or eating strategies that emphasized quantity control. So it taught the general public what the hell macros are. Macros are protein, fats, and carbs, and taught the fact that there are 4 calories for every gram of protein and carbohydrates. There's 9 calories for every gram of fats. For those of you wondering, there's 7 calories for every gram of alcohol and 7 calories for every gram of ketones if you're doing a ketogenic eating. So I love the fact that it emphasized quantity for potentially the first time ever. It taught people how to track, and it taught the importance of moderation. Now, because, moderation and tracking, basically, if it fits your macros, their whole strategy is calorie is a calorie is a calorie. So long as you hit certain amounts of protein, certain amount of fat, certain amount of carbohydrates in a given day, you could maintain a certain level of physique. So it focuses not on health, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but on physique. So if you want to kind of see where it's headed, go ahead and hop on Instagram and look hashtag iifym. You're going to see a bunch of junk food, a bunch of shredded physiques. So we'll talk about it a little bit, but if you want to kick out of that. But because it basically said a calorie is a calorie is a calorie. It has protein, fats, or carbs. That's it. There's no magical foods. It didn't demonize food. So it got away from like clean eating. You could only have to do clean eating or only have to do junk. So that could also help people get out of the moral categorization of food. So we're big, and I'm big on, I don't like the term clean eating, because first and foremost, what the hell is clean eating? You know, if you're doing a ketogenic style eating strategy, well, potatoes could be junk. If you're doing a paleo style eating strategy, potatoes could be junk or whatever. So there's going to be different things for different eating strategies that will be junk and clean. So clean eating refers to, well, I mean, there's no really definition. So because we're not doing clean foods or junk foods, you could get out of the moral categorization of food of this is good versus bad. So I'm a big fan of that. We also avoid eating the same thing every day. So that could avoid palate fatigue. So when I was uneducated following muscle comics, aka bodybuilding magazines, I ate baked chicken, quinoa, and veggies like 3 to 5 times a day, at least 5 days a week for probably 3 to 4 years. So now, even though that is a bomb meal, if I take a single bite of quinoa, veggies, and baked chicken in my mouth, I have a physical gagging reflex. So I have given myself palate fatigue. Also, because you're not eating the same thing every day, which is very common in physique or just in general, people really focused on their physique and aesthetic appearance. You know, they get a meal plan of it has to be the same meal every day, 7 days a week. Not only will you give yourself potentially palate fatigue, you can also give yourself allergies because you're eating the same thing over and over again. And they've actually done studies, which is pretty surprising, with people who follow a clean eating, same eating plan day in and day out, 7 days a week versus people who follow an if it fits your macros or flexible eating strategy. The if it fits your macros or flexible eating strategy people have less nutrient deficiencies than the people who eat the same thing or do quote unquote clean eating day in and day out, but they're eating the same foods every single day. Now, the negatives, I kind of talked on that. There is no quality control. In fact, people have taken something that was good, which originally the whole idea was like, if for this meal, if I don't want to have, broccoli, can I have green beans instead? If this meal, if I don't want to have chicken, can I have a piece of fish instead? That's what it was designed for. But people have taken it to this extreme of trying to fit in as much junk as they possibly can. So again, look up the hashtag iifym. You're going to see a bunch of donuts and Pop-Tarts and pizza, yet these shredded physiques. So people took something that was positive and ran with it and kind of made it bad. So that could lead you to a bad relationship with food as you're now purposely trying to eat as much junk as possible and then still maintain a certain level of body composition. Is it possible? It absolutely is. But then that could, while you avoid the categorization of food, that could set you up with a different negative relationship with food because now I'm trying to fit in as much junk as possible. Now, a big con of if it fits your macros of say you cannot track for that day. So that could lead to people to binging episodes. You're like, well, I'm not tracking today, so whatever, I might as well eat. I admit that was something I struggled with. When I decided it was time for me to try to lose some body fat, because I'd done enough work on myself, on my insides, that now I was comfortable with wanting to work on my outsides. When I first brought back tracking of my food and weighing my food, because I didn't do that for well over 2 years. I didn't do a quote-unquote diet for well over 2 years. I just watched what I ate. I improved the quality of my foods, but I didn't focus on quantity, so I wasn't tracking anything. Days when I couldn't track, I definitely had to fight the urge of, well, I can't track, so whatever, I'm just going to go for it. So while it's great that it teaches us moderations, on days when you're unable to track, people could fall into a slippery slope of binge eating. So just be wary of that. Now, if it fits your macros, it ignores fiber. So fiber is extremely important. So there's no the health aspect of it is not emphasized. And guess what? Body composition does not necessarily mean you're healthy. Some of the best looking bodies out there are also some of the most diseased bodies out there. Just because you're lean does not mean you have good cholesterol, good kidneys, good liver, a good heart, good insulin sensitivity, all of that. Well, you actually know, your insulin sensitivity is going to be pretty damn decent if you're lean, but body composition does not equal health. So people will look in the mirror, I'm healthy, but they're eating a bunch of junk. They're not getting enough fiber, and that is not good as well. So I love if it fits your macros. It taught the general population how to track. It taught the general population what macros are. It took the demonization of foods out, but it was misconstrued, and now people are trying to fit in as much junk as possible. If you can't track, you could go off the deep end. It ignores quality control big time. There's no quality control, and people will only post, if it fits your macros, the majority of the food, if you're doing it properly, is that boring chicken and rice or chicken and veggies or salmon and veggies or meat and it's typically wholesome single ingredient foods. But then only a small percentage should be the processed stuff. But people will, they immediately equate that with Pop-Tarts. Like Pop-Tarts are big with that crowd. I don't make sense to me. Now we have adopted some of the if it fits your macros principles, but instead of giving you eat this many protein, this many grams of carbs, this many grams of fat every day, because when the end of the day comes, it's like you're doing freaking trigonometry. Like I have 13 grams of carbs left. I have to get 22 grams of fat in and 18 grams of protein in to hit my numbers. Now, what can I, you have a spreadsheet out almost, trying to figure out what foods can you eat. So we simplify it further, which is part of our nutritional hierarchy, which hopefully this is one of the reasons why you're listening to this. So we'll give you 3 numbers. I'll just tell you right now. So if you don't have that, definitely check out our nutritional hierarchy on onerepatative.net. The 3 first numbers we focus on are total calories, a minimum amount of protein, but also, don't go over that too much, and then a minimum amount of fiber. So that means after you have total calories you're worried about, next thing you worry about is a certain amount of protein, and then a certain amount of fiber. And the fiber is going to tell us the quality of the food you're eating. So potentially the carbohydrates you're eating. If you eat a bunch of carbohydrates and you're very low on fiber, that means you eat a bunch of simple sugar. Or say if you're doing a ketogenic style eating, you're not eating carbohydrates. Well, the fiber tells us, are you eating enough vegetables? So the more carbohydrates you have one day, the less fat you have. Vice versa, the more fat you have one day, the less carbohydrate you have. So we make it like a very flexible eating strategy. So if it fits your macros is flexible eating, our take is very flexible. So you're not having to sit there at the end of the night trying to figure out or eating like a cucumber, half a cup of oatmeal, and 1 tablespoon of peanut butter, and then 1 cup of milk. Like you're not eating weird stuff like that at the end of the day. So that's our take on that. And again, if it fits your macros, a lot of good, but it's kind of been misconstrued.
Next up, I'm going to lump 2 popular diet camps together. So the Whole30, and then I'm going to lump elimination diets in with that. So the Whole30 is 30 days of taking out what the founder calls pro-inflammatory or gut-disrupting foods. So for 30 days, there's no dairy. There's no grains, no gluten, no added sugar, no alcohol, no legumes. Elimination diets take that same general concept and add a few more common food allergens to that list. So typically elimination diets will add egg whites. Surprisingly, egg yolks typically don't have any allergens in them, but egg whites people have issues with, and nuts. And so you remove those from your diet for a set period of time, and then you slowly introduce them one by one to see if you get a response from your body signaling that you have an intolerance for that. So you're taking out common food allergens and then you're slowly introducing them. So the Whole30 is after 30 days you add them back. For elimination diets, you add them back one at a time to see how your body reacts. So positives and negatives. Let's go over the positives first, like we've been doing. There obviously is an emphasis on quality control because they're essentially not allowing you to eat pre-processed, pre-packaged, highly processed foods. So there's an emphasis on quality control, which cannot be understated. I absolutely love that. I've actually had, when I first started One Rep at a Time, a lot of ladies I was doing online training for in Texas followed the Whole30 eating strategy, and they had great results. Because of this emphasis on no pre-packaged or processed foods, it's implied that you are going to have to prepare the majority of your meals. So folks who prepare the majority of their meals while following an elimination or Whole30 eating strategy typically do the best. They actually have a lot of fun with it. It in a sense accelerates the learning process of having to cook, because if you're not going to prepare your own meals, well, you can't. It's very hard to follow the guidelines of a Whole30 or an elimination diet. They're obviously great for identifying food intolerances. Elimination diet more so than the Whole30 is because you add items back one at a time. And what you would do is you add an item back and you see how your body responds. Do you have any GI distress? Do you have any constipation? Do you have any bloating? You get sick to your stomach? If you are somebody who has access to checking your blood sugar levels, you would check your blood sugar after introducing a food back to your system. So this is kind of on a side note. If you're somebody who actually has access to blood sugar, being able to test it, the blood strips and all that good stuff, and you think you might have an intolerance to an item that's not common. So if you eat a food over and over and over again for a long period of time, you could actually develop an intolerance to it. That's why there's folks who shockingly will have an intolerance to an avocado. They eat an avocado and they get a massive blood sugar spike, which is a sign that your body is identifying it as something that it is not wanting. And so it's responding to that, and insulin is somewhat pro-inflammatory if you have it elevated long periods of time. So these are great for identifying food intolerances, even without the blood sugar testing of taking them out and then slowly adding them back in one by one. Elimination diets and the Whole30 for a lesser extent are great for folks with autoimmune diseases such as Hashimoto's when it comes to your thyroid. And then in general, typically folks will see a major improvement with digestion and overall energy. Why? Because you're not eating processed foods. You're finally getting good nutrition. You're not getting sugar crashes. Obviously, you're not drinking alcohol. So that, depending on how much alcohol you drink, that could obviously affect that. So a lot of people say, oh man, I feel my digestion's better than it's ever been. My energy's great. And it's really a good way, in essence, to force. Now, we got to be careful of the word force, but like I said, it accelerates your learning process of how to prepare quality meals for yourself. And remember, learning to cook is a skill. It's going to take time, but this is a great way to do that. Now, the negatives. There's typically no quantity control for Whole30 elimination diet. So some people, a lot of people will lose weight following this. Why? Because they're so cognizant of what they're eating and they're eliminating all these, highly palatable sugar foods that tend to lead to overfeeding. So while it is possible to lose weight, it's not guaranteed because there is no quantity control. So that is my biggest gripe with that. And like paleo, like we've talked about, anytime you remove gluten or dairy for an extended period of time, because those are non-resilient enzymes, you may forever lose your ability to process those. So you need to keep that in mind. Now, a fun fact, the founder of the Whole30 program is in recovery herself. She has this awesome quote of, quitting heroin is hard, drinking your coffee black is not hard. Freaking love that. So Whole30 elimination diets, I do love the emphasis on quality, making sure you prepare your own meals, removing common food allergens and intolerances to see if you have any reaction, but it's not really. Quantity control is stressed and potentially losing your ability to process gluten and dairy over the long term. Next up, I'm going to lump any sort of meal replacement shake or bar. I'm not going to call any companies out because I don't want to get sued for slander, but I think they're a freaking horrible idea. I've been approached by several companies who do this to have me work for them, and because of a moral disagreement, I have respectfully declined. Not going to name them by name, but I have been approached for that with the potential to get a pretty significant kickback financially, and respectfully declined. So let's go over the quick, how shakes work. And the pro is, because you're replacing a whole food meal with a shake, you're going to reduce your calories, which is going to put you in a caloric deficit, which is going to equal weight loss. So if you're somebody who's morbidly obese, and it's medically necessary for you to lose an extreme amount of weight very quickly or you are going to die, there is a reason why they are medically supervised, for essence, crash diets utilizing shakes. So if you're going to a doctor, you're morbidly obese, that is how they do it, and you are going to die, then yes, shakes are the way to go. So why am I so negative with meal replacement bars and shakes? Well, the biggest problem I see is because there's no education being done, people will all of a sudden start to think that these shakes and bars are magical. They have this connotation or this connection in their head that the only way for me to lose weight is to drink these super expensive, highly processed, and honestly really low quality shakes or bars to lose weight. They're not learning anything about nutrition. So yes, they don't know how many calories they're eating before they started the shakes or bars. They replace 1 to 2, hell, maybe even 3 meals, with these shakes and bars. So then again, they don't know how many calories they're eating. They're essentially doing a crash diet. Of course, you're going to lose weight, but they're not learning anything. So now, for the rest of their life, whenever I want to lose weight, I have to do this super expensive, highly processed shake or bar. I can't lose weight without it. So my question is, where do you go when you quote unquote get off or give up the shakes or bars? There's going to be a rebound effect because most likely you had a significant reduction in your total calories beyond the 33% maximum caloric reduction that we recommend at 1 rep at a time. Typically, I say start with 20 to 25%, or general rule of thumb, 300 to 500 calories. Start there. You don't want to go to this drastic 800 to 1,000 calorie restriction right off the bat, which most shakes and bars end up doing because you're replacing, if you have bad eating habits, a meal could be containing 800 to 1,000, 1,200, 1,400 calories, and these shakes could have as little as 200 calories, bars maybe 400. So you can see how the caloric deficit adds up really quick, but you're going to get a rebound effect, that yo-yoing. So going from extremely high calories to low calories, back to high calories to low calories, you lose a bunch of weight, you feel great, you give up the shakes, you didn't learn anything. Well, you've slowed down your metabolism, you've altered your hormones. There's going to be a rebound effect. There's a reason why we as America, to quote Dr. Lane Norton, don't have a weight loss problem. We have a weight gain problem. We've proven we could lose the same 10 to 30 pounds over and over again. The problem is keeping them off because people are not learning about concepts of nutrition when they rely on these shakes and bars. So the statistics are super grim. If you lose a significant amount of weight, the stats are within 1 year, 75% of people would have gained that weight back. By year 2, it's 85%. By year 3, it's 95%. And 2/3 of those people have gained more weight than what they originally lost. That's that yo-yoing effect. And that's why I really do not like meal replacement shakes and bars. I will say though, if you are somebody who is actually learning about nutrition, So you're not just, well, I replaced 1 or 2 meals with this shake or bar and it's magical weight loss, but you're learning about nutrition. You are tracking your food or learning portion control, or even hell, using the hand device that we've put on our website. For those of you who need to make significant changes, so a scale might be a little daunting, you can start off, get the ball rolling with using your hand for a measuring device. So similarly, if you're actually making an effort to learn about nutrition and replacing a fast food or low quality meal with a shake in the beginning can be helpful to get the momentum going, get the ball rolling, see a little bit of progress to make you more invested in it, then I don't have a problem with them. But the marketing for these is what really gives me a problem, where this is, it's the best meal of the day. It's the ultimate nutrition fix. Quickest way to lose weight. I really disagree with that. So I know I probably ticked off a lot of people. I do know a lot of people who sell those as part of their job for a living. They do really well financially. That's great for them, but I just really disagree. So I have refrained from partnering with any of them or pursuing that. And just, you've got to learn about nutrition. Sure, you could do what you've always done and lose that quick 10 to 20 pounds, but what are you going to do when you're no longer, that's the weight loss, 1, is no longer happening, and 2, you get sick of what you're doing, or you can't afford the shakes or whatever crash diet you were following. You're going to be in the same position, but even worse off, because now your metabolism will slow down, your hormones are altered, all of that stuff, right? They've actually shown, while causation does not equal correlation, that the amount of body fat you have can be directly correlated to the number of diets you've tried. So that just shows, the grim results of, if you're not learning, that's what we harp on. If you're not learning about nutrition, it doesn't matter how long you could white knuckle a certain diet camp or a certain meal replacement program or whatever. So I know I got off on a tangent in a rant, got on my soapbox, but that's my take on them. Next, we'll cover vegan and vegetarian and whatever you want to throw in there. I'm going to keep this very brief. So the positives, obviously it stresses vegetables and fruit, so you're going to get fiber. And it's actually been shown that up to 95% of the American population does not get enough fiber. Fiber is absolutely crucial for our overall health. So yeah, but look, my take on vegan vegetarian is, if you have a legitimate moral or sound reasoning behind why you go vegan or vegetarian, and it's not because swayed by the vegan vegetarian propaganda or fear mongering that they result to, because that's flat out what they do. If you have if you feel very strongly about it is wrong to raise and eat animal products or slaughter animals or what that, then fine. Who am I to argue, right? There are many paths to the same top of the hill. If that's what's important to you, then by all means do that. I just don't want people to be falling for that ridiculous, what the health propaganda or everything else they do, or they just do a bunch of fear mongering tactics because it's for the greater good of getting us to eat less animals overall. So just please make sure you're having a good reason for it. Real quickly, the negatives, a vegan or vegetarian diet has to be planned out so damn well to the point where I will not work with anybody who follows that eating strategy, because I just don't know enough about it. It is super common to have micronutrient deficiencies from minerals and vitamins. It is super common to be low in complete protein sources. You have to be very smart with how you combine things. On a side note, if you are somebody who follows this type of eating strategy, supplement with creatine. You'll actually get a really big cognitive boost from that, because you're not eating red meat, you're not getting creatine. So it's actually been shown that creatine, and just stick with basic creatine monohydrate. I know I'm getting off on a tangent, but has significant cognitive boost for folks who do not eat any animal products whatsoever. And the biggest problem I have with it is, so quantities matter, but some of the most processed foods in the world are quote unquote vegan vegetarian, or the meat substitutes. Look at a vegan vegetarian packaged food and try not to read the ingredient list without needing to have a freaking PhD in biochemistry. So, that's my take on that. I will say though that part of the 1 rep at a time nutrition hierarchy, we actually encourage folks who've overconsumed protein in the past is to actually pick days where they don't eat any animal meats or no traditional protein sources. They essentially are eating a vegetarian lifestyle, day for 2 to up to 4 days a month, where they're eating just veggies, some nuts, some berries, and then healthy fats, and that's it. So we do recognize that there is benefits to not always consuming animal proteins or just protein in general. There is benefits to that, but just make sure you have a legitimate reasoning behind it and it's not just propaganda swayed. That's my take on vegan vegetarian. I hope I didn't piss too many people off, but that is just my stance on it. On the other end of the spectrum, believe it or not, there is gaining traction with which is known as the carnivore diet, which is exactly what it sounds like. All you do is eat meat. Sounds pretty crazy. Dr. Sean Baker is one of the leading guys on this. So you just eat meat primarily. He eats just steak day after after day. You can't eat shrimp sources and chicken, poultry sources, whatever, but primarily it's red meat. Because believe it or not, red meat has almost every micronutrient you would need. The only thing that red meat or just animal products, meat products in general, are lacking is vitamin C. But make the argument that you are getting at least enough from it to prevent scurvy because you're not eating dried out meat. So that's why sailors back in the day, when they would get scurvy crossing the ocean trying to explore new lands, is because they're eating dried out meats. It's not fresh and not highly processed. So that's why you get vitamin C deficiency, which links to scurvy, but you really don't need that much to put it off. But so positives, you can make it. So you, again, just similar to like vegan, vegetarian, or just any diet camp in general, you can make a really argument that makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. So, they argue our ancestors only eat meats. I will say though that it is an extreme, but it could potentially be an alternative for folks who have a bajillion different food intolerances going on, and they've tried everything under the sun, and they are just so frustrated that this all meat carnivore diet could actually work wonders for them. So just something to think about. So obviously negatives, potentially lacking vitamin C, obviously lacking fiber. I might get old eating meat. When I first heard of this, I said, well, because they will cite, there's tribes up in the Arctic that only eat meat. But my thought was, well, yeah, but they're eating the blubber, they're eating all the organ meats, getting all the micronutrients. But the Sean Baker guy actually laid out a pretty damn good argument that you could still get that eating juicy ribeyes and stuff like that. So it's out there for sure. I definitely think it's an extreme. On a personal note, I might give this a shot. I will say that, again, I'm not trying to bash on vegan vegetarian, but the carnivore diet makes more sense to me than vegan vegetarian, because there nowhere in the history of mankind were we able to eat vegan vegetarian only and not have any deficiency without having to combine different fruits and vegetables that are growing all over the world at different times. Didn't have access to this vegetable in this country and that fruit in another country. But carnivore, there's times, especially during winters or ice ages, where there ain't going to be any plants or, ain't going to be plants, there ain't going to be fruits or veggies. So all we did was eat meat. But it is an extreme. I would worry about the lack of fiber overall. But, who knows? A lot of people are having a lot of success with it. So it's something to think about. But if you're a healthy individual, I don't really see any benefit of doing that. I think this is more for folks who have tried elimination diets. They've tried keto. They've tried the carbohydrate specific diet. They've tried Whole30. They've tried everything under the sun, and they're still having really bad autoimmune issues, GI distress, gut health issues, that this might actually be a viable option. Moving on to fasting. So we'll classify, full fast and intermittent fasting. Most people hear fasting, they think of intermittent fasting. That's gotten a lot of popularity recently. So this is in fasting in general, the positives. It's great for overall health because think about it, our ancestors did not eat the same 3 to 5 meals every single day, 7 days a week. So obviously it does make sense that if you constantly over-consuming or constantly eating and pounding food routinely, that there might be some health consequences from that. So overall health, fasting is great, for lowering inflammation, improving gut health. It has been shown to be potentially anti-cancer. Studies show that chemo patients who fast for 72 hours prior to their chemo treatment have less harmful effects from the chemo and actually improves the effectiveness of the chemo. It improves our immune system. They showed in rat studies that after 72 hours, the immune system is completely turned over. It's brand new. Fasting is great for insulin sensitivity and great for increasing autophagy, which is the programmed destruction of old cells that might be weakened and damaged. What I like intermittent fast, or just fasting in general for, so I shouldn't really make a clarification, is it is great for teaching us to discern between true hunger and a craving, as well as breaking us from our conditioned hunger. So what do I mean by that? So hunger and a craving. A craving is when you have this conversation with your friend, I'm hungry. Your friend's like, well, what about pizza? No, that doesn't sound good. Or no, I'm not in the mood for that. That is a craving. What about a burger? Oh yeah, that sounds good. Okay, so that is a craving. If you're truly hungry, anything that was suggested to you would be all over that. So a craving is different than hunger. And then what was more eye-opening to me and clients who've done this is breaking from conditioned hunger. So what do I mean by that? Who do you think created the concept of breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Or an even fourth meal if you like Taco Bell and those commercials. It was the food industry, the ingenious food industry. We've been conditioned that we're supposed to eat 3 square meals a day at certain times. There's only certain breakfast foods that you could eat at breakfast. There's only lunch foods you should eat at lunch. There's only dinner foods you should eat at dinner. It's the genius food industry that has created that. Because think about it, like when, this is a very common, it hits 6:30 at night and you've already overconsumed for the day. You've already eaten too much, in fact. But because it's 6:30, all of a sudden you start to get hungry because you've been conditioned, like Pavlov's dogs, to be hungry because it's quote unquote dinner time. So fasting was instrumental for teaching me and clients to break free from conditioned hunger. And I am somebody who I admit I overconsumed. I was always trying to build, I overconsume protein, I overconsume calories. So fasting was a drastic change for me. So there is major benefits from fasting. Negatives. Well, it should go without saying, if you're somebody who has an eating disorder in your past, you should not fast. So do not fast if you're somebody who has an eating disorder. If you're somebody who doesn't have an eating disorder, I really harp on this. I love fasting, not 7 days a week, not all the time. It is intermittent fasting for a reason. If you're doing a full fast, you don't do it constantly, okay? But we should not use fasting for weight loss or fat loss. We're doing it for the health benefit. So if you, just like the meal replacement shakes and bars, if you connect in your mind that, well, if I fast, I lose weight or lose body fat, that is a very slippery slope. Now, yes, they did a study, or there's a paper, I guess I should say, that shows that they don't really think that if somebody who doesn't have an eating disorder in their past and they implement fasting, that they won't given an eating disorder from it. But I still harp on, we've got to make the clarification, the distinction. We're not fasting for weight or fat loss. We are fasting for the health benefits and to learn how to break from conditioned hunger. Fasting should not be used by folks who have adrenal fatigue, which is now, I guess they're calling it HPA dysfunction. You already have an issue with elevated cortisol. When you don't eat, cortisol is elevated. So you already have too much of that. So that is not good. It is a stressor on the body. While it is a good stress, it is still a stressor on the body. So just like we've talked about in the past, there are physiological differences between men and women. There's nothing wrong with that. Fasting does appear to impact female hormones way more than men, to the point where if women fast too often, they could actually lose their fertility and lose their ability to menstruate. So I would not fast all the time. I'm a huge fan of fasting. It is definitely a part of the 1 rep at a time nutrition hierarchy if it is appropriate and we're doing it for health benefits only. Health benefits only, not for weight loss, not for fat loss. And just on a side note, there is no such thing as anabolic fasting or fasting to build muscle. Fasting by nature is catabolic, meaning it's breaking down tissue. That's just a bunch of marketing ploys. But I love fasting for the health benefits, for teaching the difference between conditioned hunger and discerning between a craving and being actually hungry, but it's not appropriate for everybody. We have to have a good relationship with it and have the right framework or connection to why we're doing it. Real quickly, thankfully it's been put to rest, but that whole ultra low fat, avoid fat at all costs, it's not really popular anymore. But there was that time of period where fat was demonized as a devil, so there's a super fat free ultra low fat craze. No, don't do that. There's a reason why there's essential fatty acids or fats and essential proteins. There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate, by the way. So you do need protein and fat to survive and live. You do not need carbohydrates at all. So do not avoid fat at all costs. You actually need at least 15% of your calories to come from fats for health reasons. And of that amount of fat, for men, it's specifically important to have at least 30% of that fat come from saturated fat for natural testosterone production. If you don't eat that, you are going to lose your natural testosterone production. It's going to be diminished. I did an experiment of ultra low fat just to see what would happen. After 10 days, I couldn't even go out in sunlight. It hurt my eyes so damn bad. So I actually took, 4 tablespoons, which is probably too much, of avocado oil. And within the next 6 hours, I could go out in the sunlight and not have an issue. So if you're ultra low fat, your hair's falling out, you can't handle sunlight, you're having skin issues, all that stuff, it is a big sign that you are eating too little of fat. So we don't need to demonize it. Fat is not the enemy. So stay away from it. And also, whenever you see fat-free or low-fat on a packaged item, they've taken out the fat, which can be satiating and make you feel full, and they've replaced it with man-made processed sugars. So they're taking out fat and adding in sugar, and I don't think it's a coincidence that all of a sudden the fat-free, low-fat, non-fat craze hit, and our waist circumferences starting getting bigger around the world. And there you have it, family, our take on popular diet camps. So if you just found this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review in iTunes. Make sure you subscribe. Share this, especially with friends, family, and loved ones who might be considering going on to work on their nutrition, doing an eating strategy. If they're thinking of doing one of these popular diet camps, make sure they listen to this. That way they're well informed and they know what they're signing up for. And as always, thank you for tuning in. Very honored, very humbled. We can do anything we want, 1 day at a time, 1 meal at a time, 1 set at a time, 1 rep at a time. Thank you for tuning into 1 Rep at a Time Radio.
If you want to check out all of our free resources, go to onerepatatime.net. Our social media is at @onerepatatime_ for Twitter, Instagram. We just started a YouTube channel. We have our Facebook page, our private Facebook group, Recovery Strong. If you're looking for services created by yours truly, who I have over a decade worth of experience and hold a bachelor's degree in exercise science, we offer private personal training in San Diego, California. We also offer online 1 rep at a time nutrition hierarchy, where we teach you the concepts of nutrition that truly matter. So you're not merely jumping from fad diet to fad diet, not learning anything, potentially crashing your metabolism and setting yourself up for drastic weight gain once you jump off your quote unquote diet. We offer custom workout routines, not a cookie cutter program, but one customized and designed specifically for you, given your workout history, your capabilities, your equipment access, and the time you have for each week. We offer online training where you have access to us close to around the clock. We're about to introduce movement assessment and corrective exercise routines, as well as fitness Skype consultations. So as always, thank you for tuning in. 1 Rep at a Time Radio, and check out onerepatatime.net. We'll see you soon.